Quite unfortunate timing for you sillies to come here today, but at least you'll be getting the treat of witnessing the rise of a new god. Me, well, not quite me, but under the new one true god, we'll be doing a world conquest, the ultimate mission in any map game. Those syllables combined invoke fear into any history buff, for both man's greatest achievement and certain doom lie hidden in its connotations. So let's talk about world conquest. While I do think they are the penultimate paths in Europa and HOI, I think there are some issues with them occasionally. I think sometimes world conquests or just map painting in general can take away from the gaming experience. It's hard to explain. If your end goal is conquering the world, you need to be strong and you need to position yourself in a way where the enemies you'll be fighting will be beatable. Even if your first war is 2 or 3 in-game years away, the goal of a world conquest will always be lingering. And hey, are you really going to do the funny roleplay decision over the decisions that are going to give you the most PP and free factories? I don't think so. But enough of that, let's talk about taking over everything that ever existed, because as long as another entity exists, the laws of nature dictate that it'll eventually rise to oppose us. Our rule must not only be undisputed, but undisputable. Perfection is impossible, but that is no excuse for a failure to reach the greatest of possible outcomes. And that brings us to the first major element of the world conquest: prestige. A world conquest must make you feel like what you're doing is something important and unique. Manually justifying war goals on people to eventually make your country's name big can be satisfying, but it lacks narrative. Invading the world as a victorious German Reich only to reach the inevitable result of nuclear war and the destruction of anything worth fighting for, now that's a story. The mass invasion of the world of the living only for the leader of the Black Crusade itself to embrace the death she so willingly dealt out, now that's a story. But not everyone in the map gaming world is a fan of narrative content like this, so of course there has to be other allures to the world conquest. The first is perceived difficulty. The world conquest doesn't actually have to be difficult, it just has to seem difficult to players, so that in turn the players feel satisfied when they win, unless they're bad, but at least then they can experience the cool downfall narrative to distract themselves how bad they are at funny map games. And a note to developers, I would really appreciate it if you made more downfall narratives for people who are bad at funny map games. That would be nice, you know, you to throw the players a bone whenever they lose a war. I know Old World Blues does that in the one place. Yeah, I'm sure someone knows what I'm talking about. It's good though. It's the future, and it's not like I'm saying I'm bad at the game. I'm pretty good at the game, I think. I hope. Maybe not though, honestly. The most famous world conquest path is probably the 3 Mountains achievement in HOI4. You play as a one province tributary of the Ming Dynasty and have to take over every province in the world, and it's not easy. I've never even been able to finish it myself, but for experienced players it's by no means impossible, and the difficulty only comes from finishing it before the end date to get the achievement. HOI4 has an end date, I guess, but time isn't really the limiting constraint, so that makes conquests much easier if you're willing to spend an insanely large amount of time on them, and how much you're willing to exploit the game if you play as a weak country. Viira seems like a pretty weak country, but has some nice god powers mechanics to make it a bit easier. Unfortunately, in my playthrough, an extremely powerful Griffonian Republic made everything substantially more difficult. In vanilla, you don't have to worry too much about the AI snowballing, but in EAW, the AI tends to get out of control if you let time pass, and if you don't have enough divisions to fill up the combat with, you get rolled over, and that's kind of what happened to me. Things started off difficult as I had to use a lot of micro to take out my nearby neighbors. Nothing crazy though, I was able to take advantage of certain countries already being at war, and Viira has several cool mechanics as you have infinite nukes and a lot of interesting spells. To integrate new lands into your empire, you have a special button that gives the state the broad climate modifier. Unfortunately, the only spell that was very useful was the one to have infantry get 30% extra attack, and occasionally one that increased enemy attrition by like 100%. The system was still fun to use, and the infinite nukes was fun, despite not being too useful in practical wars. And I want to emphasize that the world layout this time around led to notably interesting division micromanagement. The AI had about twice the fielded manpower as I did in most of these wars, which I believe leads to the best scenario for microing. Microing divisions is still difficult, but achieving victory over your opponents is still possible. All the encirclements may be small, but they will be well earned and achieved against all odds. It's very cute and an easy way to get lots of karma. Encircling 100 divisions in vanilla HOI4's Germany against the Soviets is nothing compared to Viira encircling a couple divisions while fighting against half the known world. However, after these first initial wars, things went really downhill. The Griffonian Republic already had control over half the continent, and even with meta divisions and a ton of forts, all I could accomplish was creating a stalemate. But even with all this, they were taking millions of casualties every month compared to only like maybe 100k a month for me, but I couldn't afford 100k a month and they could afford 1 million a month, so yeah, I kind of had to. I restarted the playthrough a couple times and I still couldn't win, so I had to restart from square one. And HOI4 had been updated to no step back, so restarting completely, I was able to play on the newest version of HOI4. I knew now the best thing to do with the Viira quest chain to unlock Viira in the first place, so I was able to get to the point where I could start conquering people a lot faster. Fighting the River Coalition was difficult, kind of, but they pushed me back quite a bit, but they took so many losses that I was able to easily sweep them up once they had initially attacked me and pushed me back. But then after that, the true final boss presented herself. The supply system, despite having built civs the entire time, after conquering the Riverlands, I had way more mills than civs, and after consumer goods I could only use 35 factories, and I had to build my supply system up from nothing. It took 3 years to research the logistics tech and build level 5 railroads from my capital all the way to the border with Wingbar. Fortunately, by this time my regular infantry division looked like this, and when the majority of your divisions have this template, wars look like this. And the final war was a lot like this. I had to use the legendary strategy of advancing for a while and then pausing to take a 10-second break to regain organization, but in the end they still stood no chance. Modern mechanized and any late game tank do a great job of wiping out any division the AI can conjure. Despite the easy final wars, this was a decently difficult and very long world conquest. Well, I guess technically not a world conquest. We only took over one continent, and I know I've been talking about world conquest the entire time, but hey, it's thematically a world conquest, right? You can cut me some slack. I know it's pushing it here, but anyways, we have decisions to make, a ton of puppets across the world, but to do that we'd have to manually press the broad climate button on every single state, and I really don't want to do that. Maybe there is like a mass climate button there, but I don't really think there is. So I would just have to go to every state and click the button, and then I could release the puppets. That's gonna take quite a while. I know it's pretty easy just clicking the button on every state, but still. So anyways, that's all for Viira. A fun playthrough in a mod field with crazy wild stuff just like this. Let me know what else you guys want to see me do in HOI and any other game, I guess, and I will see you all next time.